I went live because I couldn't sleep. That's the boring truth behind a title that sounds like bait. The room looked the same as every other weeknight. Ring light balanced on 3 paperbacks. Aloe plant slumped in the window. Laundry I promised I'd fold sliding off the chair. I wasn't planning to summon anything. I planned to answer questions, sip chamomile, and pretend my life was more interesting under flattering LEDs. TikTok does the rest of the work when you go live after midnight. It funnels the restless together. Within 5 minutes, there were almost 2,000 people, then 3 comments blinking up the side, so fast I could only catch every 10th one. Where are you from? Do the filter that shifts your eyes. Read our pet names. I kept it all light, voice calm, the way you have to be when strangers hand you their feelings. I joked about my mess. I pinned a comment that said we're keeping it cozy. It stayed cozy until it didn't. It started as a dare from the chat, because it always does. Someone typed say her name 3 times. Someone else said do the mirror one. A lot of you only know those as playground whispers. To creators, they're retention tools. I told them we weren't doing rituals tonight. The comments poured back. Scared? Do it if you're not scared. I countered with my usual safety spiel. The algorithm loves a line in the sand. So it does whatever lives on the other side. There's a hallway off my bedroom that stops at a cheap, tall mirror. My landlord left it behind. If you stand in my room, you can see the mirror in the live frame, tilted just enough to show the dark slice of hallway and the kitchen beyond. On camera, it looks deeper than it is, like the phone makes it longer. I never noticed that before that night. I also never noticed the way the mirror sometimes catches a little motion from the street and turns it into something else. I compromised. I told Chad I'd do it as a joke. I stood up, carried the phone closer, set it on the desk, so the mirror took up the left third of the frame. I kept the light low and turned off the beauty filter so I didn't look like I was hiding. I smiled because smiling makes people stay. Then I said the name, not the one you think. A different one from a story my grandmother used to tell in Tagalog about a woman who listens at windows. I said it once. The chat went wild. I said it twice. Somewhere, a dish clinked in the sink like metal settling. I waited too long before the third, because waiting is part of the show. Then I said it, soft enough that I could claim it didn't count if anything got weird. The lag on live is always a second or 2, so the comments hit me before the sound did. All caps behind you, and stop and bro look. I laughed because that's the contract. I leaned closer to the phone. That's when the audio did the thing it sometimes does on live. A thin metallic echo chasing my words like a second mouth. I've had that happen when my neighbor's Bluetooth speaker is on. I thought great timing. I told the chat it was just a glitch. The plant moved. Not a sway from the fan kind of move, but a slow lean like someone exhaled behind it. I wasn't looking at the plant. I was looking at my own face, which is how you miss things in your own home. The chat didn't. The chat is 1,000 eyes and 0 context. Comments stacked. Left, left, left. The mirror showed my hallway. And in the darkness, it also showed something like a shoulder where no shoulder should be. If you've ever watched a live frame morph, you know how compression makes shadows step forward. I told myself that. I told them that. I told the screen, it's pareidolia, we're brains stapling meaning onto noise. The word looked smart typed into the live. It didn't feel smart in my throat. When I reached over and turned the ring light down, the room got honest. The phone tried to keep up, pumping ISO and pulling grain for nothing. The glow painted my hands a little too white. In the mirror, the hallway looked like a tunnel. There was a second where the whole stream wavered. One of those stutters that makes your face freeze mid-syllable. In that held breath, something slid into frame at the very edge of the mirror. Not a person, not a trick of light, exactly the shape of attention. That is the only way I can describe it after replaying the screen recordings you sent. Attention entering a room. I've done enough lives to know you don't feed that moment with panic. If you want to keep people, you get smaller, quieter. I spoke the way nurses speak, gentle, but with the kind of firmness that makes the body listen. Okay, I said, we're going to take a breath. We're not going to invite anything we don't understand. The comments argued with me. They wanted me to go down the hall. They wanted me to shut the door. They wanted opposite things at once because the internet is many people trying to be one mind. Here is where the part of me that treats fear like content met the part of me that grew up with rules about doors and names. I didn't end the live. I tilted the phone so the mirror filled the frame. I stood off to the side, out of my own shot like a camera op stepping back to give the scene air. The plant leaned again. The spoon in the mug tapped itself without my hand anywhere near. The AC wasn't on. Then came 3 knocks from nowhere. They weren't loud, just deliberate. 3 hollow taps, spaced like a question. The chat surged into caps, and the viewer count jumped the way it does when someone clips midstream. I told myself plumbing, a neighbor, anything ordinary. Then the spoon in my mug clicked twice and settled like a coin deciding yes. I shifted the phone so the hallway mirror owned the left third of the frame. If you've ever filmed a mirror for too long, your brain starts drawing lines between pixels. That's when we saw it. Not a face, not a body. More like the corridor itself pinched and then relaxed, as if something wider than the hall had to narrow to pass. Knocks are wind, I said too calm. Old buildings flex. My duplex is brick from the 50s. Radiators ping. Cabinets talk when heat hits them. Facts make good talismans, but the comments wanted a test. Close the door, they said. No. Keep it open. Count to 3 again. I felt the pull to perform and felt ashamed of it. My grandmother would have smacked my hand away from the glass and swept salt across the threshold. But she also taught me not to leave a question hanging, if you call you close. I faced the mirror without meeting my own eyes. I said her name once, then said, Hindi ka inimbitahin, Hindi ito para sa iyo, not an invitation, this is not for you. I thanked the air and told it to return to where it belongs. Nothing moved. For a second the stream felt silly, like we had shouted a shape into our own nerves. Then the ring light dimmed 1 notch without my hand on the dial. Not a big flicker, more like the grid yawning when a hairdryer clicks on Nextdoor. The comments surged. Power drop, do again. That phrasing stuck to me like a burr. Do it again, as if light should perform on command, as if the thing we joked into the room could make requests. You saw the lag earlier, I said. You know, audio feedback happens. I counted my beads of logic and my grandmother's rules at the same time. If it asked for again, she'd say, you give it a goodbye. I reached for the X to end the live, then stopped. Cuts feel safe for viewers and unsafe for people inside the scene. They punish exits. They want to ride the feeling down the curve. So I compromised. I planted the phone on the dresser, aimed at the mirror, and stepped out of frame, leaving my voice without my face. I walked into the hall with my real body, while my digital body stayed to guard the shot. 3 steps past the plant, and the air turned cool and damp, like the inside of a stone sink. I smelled something thin, not rot, not perfume, a distant rain and dust. From the bedroom, the gift chime rang, the little bell that plays when someone sends roses or a fire. It rang once, then again, in 3s, cute any other night. The wall answered with 3 taps, spaced the same. I believed 2 things at once. Somebody in the building had awful timing with a hammer, and my room had learned a new language. Stop, I said to the wall, to the viewers, to myself. We're done. I backed until my shoulder returned to the corner of the screen, not a host now, but a person who had stayed too long at a door. Curiosity bred where caution begged. I lifted my palm toward the mirror the way you do with a skittish cat. In the reflection, my hand rose a hair slower than my hand in the room. The chat saw it too. Why is your reflection late? I wanted a rapt explanation. Compression, buffer, ghosting, any term that translates wonder into cope. Instead, I closed the room, not the app. I said her name once more the way my grandmother would at a window. Full name, then go in peace, then you cannot be fed here. The ring light breathed back to full. The plant stood very still. In the screen, my reflection became only an echo again, not a leader. I sat on the floor, cross-legged, exhausted the way you get after holding your body too carefully. I told the chat I was ending the live. They begged for replays and copies and swore they saw what I didn't. I promised not to delete, then end it anyway, because there's a difference between keeping a promise and keeping a door open. After, the room felt like noon checkout in a hotel, empty to the sleeper, but not quite mine. I texted a neighbor about the power. No flicker. I checked the breaker like I knew what to see. Every switch looked stern and ordinary. I pressed a leaf on the aloe to feel if it held a memory. It held only sap. Screen recordings arrived before my adrenaline ebbed. People DM'd clips from different phones and languages, but the same excited breath. At 27 minutes 12, a darkness at the mirror's edge smudged left and then unsmudged. At 28, my reflection blinked alone. At 29, just before goodbye, a shape that wasn't a person leaned in and then out like a listener deciding whether to understand a word. I didn't sleep, not because I feared a step from the hall, but because belief swings both ways. If I called it Wi-Fi jitter and attention mechanics, I could function. If I called it attention learning to wear a shape, I would have to change how I lived with mirrors. Morning made the mirror honest. The hallway was only a hallway. The plant, sadly, was only a plant. I made coffee that did not stir itself. I opened TikTok, watch numbers climb, and try not to mistake reach for safety. I won't say her name on live again, ever here.